I'm the chair, I'm a FAR rep. To my right,
Rich Bard.
Just introduction.
Rich Bard.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
I thought you said which part.
I thought you were waiting for me to introduce my friend. I guess you need a call and you can tell her.
I try to do a pause.
Sorry, Rich.
Yeah, you okay?
Oh, yes, sorry. Heather Griffith, real estate.
Nicole Scrow, real estate professional. Madeline Mettler, acting housing program manager. Not what's going on in this, sure what's happening in this room today, but.
So I'm Andy Friedman. I'm a consultant working for Kelly and NDS, and I'm going to be presenting today.
Kelly Brown, NDS director.
Sunshine Maitland, Piedmont Housing Alliance.
Mike Crazy, I'm the secretary. I'm an at-large member, Rose Hill.
Kathleen.
Hey, Kathleen Lynn Matthews, I'm with the Housing Authority.
Miles Misco, I'm a planning intern.
Jose Akinwitson, Long Range Planning Manager.
And it looks like we've also got Tori from the Long Range Planning Department online as well.
Okay. All right, next on our agenda is staff updates.
I will admit I did not prepare an update for today's meeting. We've had a lot going on. If anyone's been watching any city council meetings for the last couple of months, you've probably seen Sunshine or Kelly or me at one or all of them. I've been working with Sunshine to finalize a couple of funding things for some projects PHA is doing, as well as with CRHA. This is time of year that LIHTC applications are due, so there's a lot of last minute details to be finalized. We've also continued working on, well, Kelly is really managing that, working on student housing and fee in lieu study. Our CAP committee has been busy at work reviewing all of the CAP COPS grant applications. They'll be ready to have their funding recommendations by the end of this month for those. That is all I can think of at the moment. Kelly, do you have any updates you want to share?
You covered everything on the
Yeah, I mean, the other big one that is the housing program evaluation, but Andy is here to talk about that, so.
Are there any other questions for, Natalie?
I guess you guys talked about, you had had many meetings.
Yes.
You talked about the tax abatement program. No,
Last night.
last night.
Yeah.
I mean, when it could recap of that? I didn't watch it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think council was generally supportive of the idea. There's still a number of details we would have to work out if we thought we did want to implement it. And as Michael Payne pointed out at the meeting last night, he's not here today, but we don't really have any additional capacity right now to start a new program immediately. But we will be working to develop some recommendations for council. And I don't know if we'll need to get more feedback about if we were going to be designing a policy, then there's still a lot of things we would have to make decisions about. But I think the feedback last time was overall positive. There were questions that come up, but honestly, most of the questions they even asked were answered on the spot. Anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think we're just at the point of and processing what the questions that council posed and thinking about what options for the way moving forward.
Okay.
And the timeline then, given that
I don't think we have.
Yeah.
that's fair. You guys are
We just
doing a lot of heavy lifting.
We gotta still kind of recap and make our plan for that.
That's one of our goals for 2026, isn't it? Or was it one of our goals? Try to tax on those is to try to advocate. But yeah, I mean, staff is doing that.
Yeah, we did the big thing was we wanted to evaluate if this is something that would be worthwhile. And I think a lot of the findings from that study have been helpful in other ways too. And have like kind of bled over into the student housing study that went well. So more to come, certainly.
Okay. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a couple of other people coming in. You go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Dan, I'm hungry. I'm with that.
Hungry Dad.
I'm Terry Tyree, I'm a resident of South First Street, and just got appointed yesterday.
Oh,
Welcome. All right, number next on the agenda is the approval of January 21st meeting minutes.
You might note the year says 2024. Just notice that.
So,
Apologies.
There's one
Using an
one
old
modification.
template.
for approval.
Oh, yeah, I just saw that.
Motion for the January minutes with the change to Franklin Board of Finance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes has been approved. Number next on the agenda is the presentation on housing program evaluation.
Mr. Green, before you jump in, I also just wanted to make sure you were acknowledged. You introduced yourself, just for the benefit of those folks that.
Michael Payne.
I'm sorry, Michael.
You're good.
I apologize. No, that was just a little bit of oversight, that's all. Just trying to move the agenda along, I'm sorry.
I don't need to take any time, just wanted to thank Mr. Friedman for being here. As you all know, with the housing program moving into new development services last year and the departure of our housing program manager, it seemed like the right moment to do an evaluation, determine, take stock of all of our priorities and our needs here in the community and figure out what sort of resources are needed to support those efforts. And so I'm very happy to have Mr. Friedman here. Don't need to take any of this thunder, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. Okay, so I'm Andy Friedman, and let's see, are we going to do this?
Oh, it should.
Okay. I have a company called Progressive Housing Solutions, and I've been a consultant for 4.5 years. Previously, I worked for the City of Virginia Beach Department of Housing and Neighborhood Preservation for 34 years, and I was director for 28 years, and we did all kinds of housing stuff. In Virginia Beach, there is no housing authority, so we had the housing voucher program, housing development, we did homelessness, code enforcement, housing development. And I applied to, made a proposal through the RFP process to do this project because I thought it was really interesting and because I really like Charlottesville. My son and his wife live here. They went to UVA and I love it here. So I thought opportunity to come here, opportunity to hopefully contribute to your housing programs.
Might be the other.
I might not doing it wrong.
You just click the first, the left button.
Okay.
But let me make sure. No, it's like every time it goes away. There we go.
Okay.
I'll go back.
There we go. So what did the RFP ask for? This is Kelly's RFP asking for someone to do this, which is to do a staffing focused evaluation of the city's housing program, assess current staffing capacity, role alignment, and expertise to ensure the program is effectively meeting its strategic objectives and community needs. Evaluation plan, which I did, that was the start. Organizational assessment report is really the final report that I'm going to do. And today we're giving you the opportunity to see the preliminary ideas that I have, give feedback to Kelly and I so that we can do a final report. I can do a final report. And as part of the process, clearly we wanted to be here and get your feedback before the report was finalized. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Val.
No, it's good.
So far I've read a lot of the city documents that Kelly and Madeline have provided. I've looked at some of the city council minutes from the recent meetings. I interviewed many of you, 18 people altogether, and I've got a kind of summary. I'm going to give you some of the feedback from those interviews. I've done some initial peer cities research, and let me just say that you have no peer cities. There is nobody of this size anywhere in the universe of housing affordability effort with Charlottesville. And this presentation is really intended to give you the preliminary thoughts and get your feedback. So as I said, Charlottesville is really a state leader in affordable housing investment. The only place that I found, so this is not final, but the only place I think comes close to the per capita investment in affordable housing is none other than Fairfax County. Fairfax County has 20 times the population, but only 5 times the housing investment. They've invested, this year they're they're investing $50 million, and you guys are investing 10 or more million. So it's way up there on the scale of investment per capita, probably per city budget portion, anything that you can probably measure. And part of my job is going to go back and kind of get those a little more solid so you can really have a good comparison. You have a wide-ranging and expanding array of programs just in the past few weeks. You've been talking to council about the tax abatement program, the rental arrears program, and others that you guys have mentioned. You have programs operated all around the city, multiple city agencies, as well as multiple community organizations. There's been a big staff change where it's been assigned to neighborhood development services. And as I said, you're doing some studies of programs and considering new programs as well. Okay, sorry. So as far as staffing, this is a staffing focus report. The original consultant report that put together that $10 million recommendation, and some of you brought this to my attention, it said it'd be prudent to invest 10% of that $10 million on staffing. That's really like, if you look at federal funding for housing programs, like the minimum, a lot of them will give you 10% for admin. There was a report last April by the previous housing folks that said there was a critical need for staffing to help manage and implement the housing efforts that the city is doing. Many of you said to me, both people in the city and outside, yes, we need staff to do this work. And so, I mean, it's not a hard conclusion to make that we need staff to keep the programs going and make sure we achieve the city goals, which are incredible goals with a lot of effort.
Andy, do we know if we're at that 10% level?
We are not.
Like even before the recent step,
Right.
At the April 2025 meeting, we were not.
It was at, I think, 400,000 at that time. But since that time, really Madeline is the only full-time person in housing.
And that was including some of the partial time of staff members that were in OCS that were lending their time to housing as well. So
Or like baseline before the shakeup was like 5%.
Really, that would be stretching it. Yeah, about 5%.
and that was for like 2.5 folks approximately.
Okay, so it's really important to go over what's currently being done, and Madeline's the acting housing program manager. She's doing all of these things. I won't read them all to you, but point of contact for CRHA and the multiple projects going on with CRHA and for this committee, the CAF committee, the new programs that are being reviewed and developed as we speak, the data dashboard, and also annually reporting to council, which I think you did just recently in fall on the affordable housing plan. But anyway, all of these are part of the responsibilities that need to be conducted right now, being conducted right now. And then, and that's an existing budgeted staff position as the housing programs manager. That's in the city budget right now. And this one is also in the city budget, right? This is the housing grant administrator and compliance coordinator, all the grant work and reviewing inclusionary zoning and monitoring that.
And who's doing that function currently? So that's both, you're under both those things?
Well, so this was my role prior to taking on acting housing program manager, but there's nobody additional doing any of that.
So it's one, you're doing both positions in effect right now.
Yeah.
Something also that's just helpful to understand the scale of that grant monitoring administration is that between HOPS and CAF it's about $1 million, right? And then SISRAP is
A 900,000,
so it's 2 million in grants per year.
Thank you. And then also to be determined who's going to do this, but we have the annual NOFA process and project selection underway now and then continuing. The evaluation of CRHA development and all the development deals the city's involved in both now and in the future, and development agreements. And there's a lot of need to review those with high-level financial expertise to make sure they work, the city's getting what it needs, and the deal is going to be feasible.
Who's doing that right now?
I'm pitching in as much as I can to keep things moving.
You are?
Yes.
So do you think we need one person to manage? Oh, yeah.
With specialized expertise.
Yeah. Grant writing.
Affordable housing development. I guess it's a very specialized field. I'm sure I can tell you all.
And we've been using an attorney.
We have internal counsel from our city attorney office who helps with loan agreements. Our city attorney office is not, they are not specialized in this field. So we have been working with some outside counsel who specialize in affordable housing development deals, and so she's been supporting us as well. So this is work that should be handled by a specialist in affordable housing.
Where's the development? Go ahead, John.
Who was doing this before? Was that Antoine?
There was a woman who worked in OCS who was doing this before.
And she's no longer here.
She is no longer with.
And
She is not.
Antoine is
She
no
was
longer.
reassigned, and Antoine is gone.
Okay, so that's 2 bodies.
That's right.
Okay,
And
3 bodies. I'm sorry, Ben. I'm just adding up.
no, you go ahead.
Okay. No, I'm just counting how many other replacements you need.
Yeah.
To be able to
We
give.
used to have a director, in OCS who was focused on a number of items, housing being one of them. And then there was another staff person who moved loan agreements through the process. This was not an area of specialization for her, but she did what needed to be done. And then, yes, we had Antoine as the housing program manager. That position will be filled. We've been working through this evaluation to figure
What
out.
about the other 2?
We don't have those resources any longer.
That was Taylor.
No, Taylor,
Or-
I didn't even mention Taylor. Taylor was not working specifically on housing programs, although she was supporting a little bit of the grant work in that.
Yeah, and she still does. I still work with the grants office, but they don't, Taylor's grants team was never managing like the administration of the housing grants. And they're not now either.
So we have a department for grant writing specifically.
Well, they do a lot of more tracking of money that is coming into the city through grants. So any department that's applying for grant funding, they're going through that office.
Gotcha.
And then they are also overseeing the like monitoring of city grant money.
Okay.
Dan.
What is the relationship of our redevelopment manager, Brenda, with this org chart? Is she tangential?
She used to, that was her title, and she supported reinvestment in a number of different ways in the city, affordable, non-affordable, through the loan agreements. She is now working in economic development as a downtown strategy manager. So she is no longer supporting housing.
Okay. Do you have, maybe jumping the gun here, but do you have this visually as an org chart? Or
I think I was just going to say, we'll do something like that to show.
But it's pretty straightforward. It's a housing program manager
And
and a compliance.
right
In the
now,
current state.
Yeah.
right?
What it was previously is what you're suggesting.
It might be interesting to overlay those things, to sort of color code it. Here's what we have. Here's what we used to have, and maybe
Right.
eventually here's what the recommendation.
Yeah, and what's
And
needed.
I think what you're getting into, like, even a relatively well-informed group like this still has some uncertainty around how it was structured versus how it is versus how it should be.
We'll definitely do that.
We love having that when it's a single point of contact, but I'm guessing she doesn't want that.
It would be nice to have another point of contact with that. If anyone wants to take some phone calls, take some messages, I can't pay you for that work, but I take volunteers.
Great. So I wanted to go through some of the things. So as I discussed with some of you in interviews, talking about what staffing you need really revolves around what you're trying to accomplish. And a lot of you had thoughts on that. Community needs drive what we're trying to accomplish. All of these were mentioned in the interviews: need for more one-bedroom units, more accessible units, especially critical affordable rental housing for affordable people under 60% of median, and seniors. Need for first month's rent to get people into affordable units, even when they can't afford the ongoing rent. Case managers for people with high barriers. Enhanced access to housing for unhoused individuals who may be qualified for but don't have the connections or any of the things needed to get into it, and the connection between an available unit and where they are. Workforce housing and missing middle housing, navigation of the housing system, who to call for what service that you need. I'm glad I see a nod on that one. Production of housing below 50% of median. And then what was recently mentioned, renters in subsidized units still not paying their rent. And also preventing the loss of affordable units, a wide range of community needs out there. And some policy issues that kind of cross over with community needs, but obviously student housing issues have been an issue here forever, will continue to be.
Don't say.
I'm sorry.
You don't say.
Prevent displacement. Considering neighborhood TIFs to help reinvestment in neighborhoods. Ensure accessibility, we mentioned that, navigation. Promote better management of rental properties. Somebody talked to me about a rental housing inspection program that they wanted to suggest. Looking at housing policy comprehensively, including the production of all types of housing, as well as the affordability supply, and coordinating the investment plans for the CIP and CDBG and CAP. So these are some of the things that you mentioned to me in the interviews. We also have, next slide, the program reviews and new programs, which really is a mind-blowing list. But the CSRAP review is already planned, may have started. The ADU manual update is underway. The rental arrears program, which is just approved. A rental inspection program that I mentioned. Site acquisition, I wrote down systems. We talked about the land bank, but there's other ways to do that with investment funds. The tax abatement program, which was just briefed to council just recently. Developer incentives, a bridge loan program is under consideration. HCV home ownership program is a possibility. The landlord risk reduction fund, I know in Virginia Beach, that was something that after I left, they've implemented, working with landlords to incentivize them to take people with subsidies. Landlord outreach, recruiting and retention, ensuring you have enough landlords who will accept the vouchers and the subsidies. Security deposit assistance for renters. So all of those are somewhere in the mix of potential or advocated for new programs. And goals for the overall nature of the program. Clearly on a critical need, and this from Kelly, from the city attorney's office, and from several others, protect the city and development deals and contracts for services. So we pay for what's needed, we get what's needed, and we make sure it continues over the long term. Make sure we measure our impact and tell the story really well so that the community and the partners and the advocates understand that everything that's being done. And then when you look at the list of new programs and current programs, it's really important to focus strategically and say, what can we do now that's most important? And that's a critical need right here. When you have so many options, council that really wants to act on these, we have to focus down and say, do this first, do that. Policy, process, and procedures, something that internally there really needs to be more of that to make things happen more smoothly and to be able to have the paper trail to justify why we've done what we've done, and the comprehensive approach to the housing system. So all of these are goals that would be really important to achieve, and staff are needed to figure out how to do all of this. So here are my initial draft staffing recommendations. We're here to talk to you because we want your feedback about that. We will prepare that chart that you said, past, current, and future. Put these on the future side. The housing programs manager, however they're titled in the neighborhood development services chart, but that is a budgeted function, the person who leads all of the NDS housing programs. A key thing will be for them to provide strategic focus. We talked about high-level communication, be a spokesperson for housing in the city, and coordinate with all partners. And that is a big job, talking to everyone, making sure we're all rowing in the same direction. The housing finance administrator, something we were just talking about in here, the high-level development finance expertise, a very specialized field. Can't hire a new person just out of school to do this. You have to hire someone who's actually done deals. You have to get someone who knows the intricacies of the low-income tax credit and development financing to make sure the city's doing the right thing, doing it the right way. That's not a funded position. That's one we're recommending to be put in place. The Housing Grants Compliance and Metrics Administrator, which is a currently funded position that Madeline's doing along with being the acting manager. And that's pretty much speaks for itself. We're funding stuff all over the place with multiple organizations and keeping track, making sure when you give a grant, it happens, making sure the money is spent and spent correctly, all of that. And then giving the facts so we can report out and say, talk about our successes and what's left to do. Another new position recommended is the housing policy analyst / planner to coordinate, review, and evaluation of the new and existing programs. So basically a program evaluation function, both for the current ones we're doing, as well as the new ones that are either about to be implemented or under consideration. Everything we do should fit into a system so that this program does that piece and this program does the other piece. They fit together and they get the result you want. It's really, when you're talking about development subsidies and inclusionary zoning and tax abatement on the same project, that is a really complex set of things that need to be looked at and considered to make sure we understand what's actually happening and what the net result on the ground will be. And then finally, another new recommended position is a resource development / fund development person. In Virginia Beach, we found that there were opportunities to go after non-local taxpayer funds. And by that, I mean charitable funds, state funds, federal funds. It takes effort to get money. There is not just, oh, there's that grant, we'll just write a piece of paper and get it. It takes effort. And then when you get it, you have to administer that money and you have to use it for the purposes, you have to report on it. If you don't devote effort to getting new money in, you're just not going to get it. And it's easy not to do that. But in the context of this city doing massive local funding effort, I suggest it would be very valuable to look outside. You know, there's been very successful charitable donations toward affordable housing development here, pretty unique. But there could be others. And especially with the incredible community support that's here for affordable housing, I think that there's possibilities for charitable giving. And Kelly and I have already talking about administrative support grants from Virginia Housing that may be applied for, that may be helpful to carry out, in fact, some of these tasks that we've identified. So this person, this position, it was a full-time person, maybe, you could pilot it for 2 years and see if they bring in more revenue than the cost. And if they did, it's a no-brainer. So I suggest we look at that.
For the housing policy analyst, would that position kind of incorporate the analysis role of evaluating like performance of different programs, or seeing this was the goal when it was created, but we're getting the opposite outcome, that kind of thing? Or would that be a separate position?
So I think it worked with the compliance coordinator, because the compliance coordinator is the person who's supposed to look at the projects and make sure they did what they said. This person is supposed to look at new projects and then kind of take a broader view overall. How's the program operating and how the program works with other programs. So I think they would work together on that. This one is more focused on higher level on new stuff, whereas the compliance person continues to monitor everything that's in place over time and produces that. Madeline, do you want to add to that?
Well, I was just thinking like the CISREP program evaluation, for example. This is something like that's an ongoing program that we want to periodically be able to evaluate. So yeah, I think that would fit in there. And then in addition to
or the tax abatement program.
right, if we were going to start any new program.
They have findings from a consultant that indicate, that it could be a tool that has some value, right? But there's a lot of questions about how it should be used here in the city. Should it be used for big projects, for little projects, for this geography, for that geography, for this percent of AMI, that percent of AMI? There is a specialization in the affordable housing professional field of folks who focus on the development of those kinds of policies. And right now we don't have anybody that can do that for us. I dabble with it, but it really is something that the city could benefit from somebody that was really focused on.
I definitely agree with that, and that's because I'm thinking like the capacity to like the tax abatement program, because there'll be so much variation of project type, geography, to like just visualize it, present it to staff and council like I don't know.
It absolutely makes sense. Yes, you want somebody who can develop those options and the pros and cons and what it would take and be able to present those recommendations as options to council, get council's feedback, figure out, and planning commission too. Let's not forget about all the other stakeholders that should be involved. That is what a policy analyst / planner can do to help a community really have a more robust program and a program where different parts of the system are really speaking to one another as well. Someone who can kind of zoom out and look at the big picture.
This may be a bit of a leading question. It probably is. But so one of the things we talked about this in our interview, one of the places where the city has been most successful in translating the vision of council to action was in the realm of historic preservation planning. I attribute that largely to having a historic preservation, a very effective historic preservation planning czar, Mary Joyce Scala, who, when there was money to be found other people's money. When there were resources available that maybe not monetary or otherwise nationally, she connected with applicants and helped them. And most importantly, she was a shepherd of any project that had a historic preservation component. She ran herd with it, and she had the authority to do so. Her word, she showed up at the planning commission along with the neighborhood planners, but kind of had the final word. I mean, obviously council does, but had sort of final staff authority. Do you see that that sort of czar or shepherd role being invested in the housing program manager somewhere else, or not at all?
Before you respond to that, can I just want to build on that for a second? The thought that I was having, which is I think parallel, but is around, and we've talked about this different times, like a housing ombudsman, like someone, because as we're talking about an array of different staffing structures, which we all agree fundamentally we need new, additional staffing support. For I think what you've laid out, generally speaking, makes sense to me. The risk is that it becomes, overly bureaucratic to some extent. And what we need in this day and time, when it's hard to navigate federal and state resources, to have local partnership in whatever sort of process we're moving forward with. And I think that having somebody who is that sort of ally partner within the city to help navigate these pieces, navigate into NDS and site and zoning and like all of those pieces, having somebody to be that shepherd, I think is crucial.
Kelly,
I think the ombudsman is a very, very important position to have because the community doesn't trust the planning department. Period. There is a distrust out there about working with the planning department. I know that one of the things I applaud you all doing is having, I keep messing your name up, Jose, come in the community and she's sitting there, right? Hopefully the goal is that people will know her, build a relationship with her to be able to gain that trust, but that trust is just not there, right? So having an ombudsman who, based on, you can tell me if I'm wrong, an ombudsman is like in the middle. They're not either for the right or the left, but it's trying to find the media, right? And that's needed.
Kelly, do you want to respond to?
And then I have one more question after that, but I was just piggybacking on what Dan was saying. I love Joyce when she was here, but I haven't found another Joyce in here yet. But yeah, ombudsman, I do support that idea.
I think what I'm hearing you say is that you're looking for someone who's really dedicated to promoting the community's vision and goals for housing in the city. And I think that having a housing program manager or a deputy director for housing in the department that really has that role is important. And
but a housing program manager, when they're talking to you, they're doing what they're told.
I don't really see how any city staff member could be that position then. I mean, they would always be a city employee.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So I don't.
So can I maybe articulate better if I can?
If
try
you
my
try.
I'm not trying to articulate your vision.
You can try.
But so there are places within city policy is blunt, right? It's not sharp, and policies don't all connect together. That's something I've been talking about here for a while. Is that there are lots of times in the sausage making of putting a project together, bringing it from inception to completion, where there are fundamental choices that have to be made. Do we want wider roads, more housing, right? Do we want, how do we, and then you have multiple departments or multiple people who are in their lanes doing their thing with good intention, but they don't add up to more, better, affordable housing. Right. And what we had years ago when this was a clear mandate from council that historic preservation is our highest value, or at least that's the way it was interpreted. We had somebody who broke ties, right? Who said, look, engineer, you might want something, fire marshal, you want something, but the city has said we want historic preservation. And so she kind of had the hammer. She had and that's what I'm wondering is, does that function exist somewhere in this structure? Because I think that's where things get bogged down a little bit.
So I think the housing program manager is the position that is envisioned as the person who can speak for housing and bring the conversation that's necessary to do those things you're talking about. It's not necessarily the hammer, but it is the conversation directly to see how you can thread down the middle of all the things that are involved, including someone talked about the density and the inclusionary zoning, the stormwater requirements. Someone mentioned that as a limitation, all the safety codes. Those all have to be addressed. But sometimes there are middle roads that can be taken, and having someone and this is how I see it, someone whose job it is to wake up in the morning and move affordable housing forward, however that translates to. It's meeting with planning, it's meeting with the fire marshal, meeting in the community, all of those things necessary to have the conversations that could push it forward. And that's why I think this staffing recommendation is so important. There has to be someone who, that's their whole job, is here's the city's housing programs agenda, and I'm in charge of helping make that happen, whether that is X, Y, or Z. That's how, it's not necessarily the person you said, but it is a person who tries to figure that out every day.
And I have a question. I've noticed this void in meetings where there are these ties, fire, utilities, whatever, and there is nobody pushing, saying that council has clearly expressed housing is our biggest priority. So I think that's an important points to have. Previously, was that like a political result, her having that power? How would we take that into a staffing recommendation?
That's a good question. I don't know that we can completely look back to what we had with Mary Joy and replicate that because we were a different city. And that was one of the challenges the city faced. As the city grew, it needed to be more process oriented and more, I wouldn't say regulated, but more process oriented. Whereas before we had the people with the loudest, strongest voices in City Hall would kind of get together and solve problems. And so I'm not suggesting that we replicate that, but we figure out what was good about that function that allowed things to move forward. And so, so it's the person who, when we look at standards and design manual, most of the housing perspective came from volunteers. I volunteered. I think Nicole, you were probably part of that. Cadre was part of that. Charlie Armstrong from Southern Development, and we stepped in and we gave as much feedback as we could, but we weren't part of the city. There was no housing person who understood the engineering requirements, fire requirements, et cetera, and their impact on density. So I guess I would say a couple of things. I love the idea of promotion to deputy director, if not, frankly, even a city manager position for this. But as high as the city manager's office and Kelly thinks that position should go, they should sit up on top.
Well, but they're in the city manager's office, they're no longer.
Right, but whoever it is, that person should have the authority to make some decisions, even when there are contradictory opinions about what the public benefit is. And two, we need to be prepared to pay that person, because that person needs to have experience and expertise in lots of different things: development finance, utility infrastructure, fire suppression, all of that stuff. And so this is not I don't see this as a $50,000 a year position. I see this as a well-paid position with somebody with a lot of experience.
Just for awareness, the housing program manager position that currently exists is on par with our building code official.
Okay.
It is, so it is not a junior level position by any means. But if we did want to, seek to reclassify it as a deputy director position, it would be, a budget request.
Yeah, and I'd be strongly support. The two things here, I mean, all of this I think is great. The two things that I think are really, really exciting here are number 1 and number 5. Without somebody searching for OPM, other people's money, as the county calls it, we're always going to be robbing Peter to pay Paul, especially with a city like Charlottesville that is trying to outpunch its weight and doing more than any other comparable municipality. We can't do it alone. And so, it shouldn't be a zero-sum game. So I really like that. But I really want to make sure that program manager, whether it's a deputy director or whatever, has the highest possible ranking, so that, I don't see that person. I don't think it's structurally right to have that person sitting equal to the building code official. I think it has to be above the building code official, to be honest with you. It has to be above engineering, above fire, somehow on some level above fire suppression, above.
Well, I do want to just make sure we're managing expectations. As much as I want this to be a senior level position, perhaps more so than it is today, and recognize the value of having somebody that, as you put it, Andy, wakes up in the morning and wants to advance affordable housing goals in the city with everything that they do. There will continue to be, other needs that the city has to balance, and that is compliance with state regulations and, the questions about utility lines into the back of lots, fire safety. Those will continue to be things that we have to balance and try to navigate and find a middle path. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't finding ourselves in a place where if we decide we want to push for a deputy director position, that all of our problems will be solved.
No, I hope I'm not. I hope I'm being clear. That I'm not talking about non-compliance and health and safety.
And I didn't say anything.
What I'm saying is that
There will still be some roadblocks.
that housing, if it's equal, it is always going to be secondary. It is because determinations about, like, if someone says we need 10 feet of separation between these two lines, it's a health and safety issue. Well, then everyone else runs away, right? If the fire marshal says we need 25 feet of clear and no parking over here, and we need to be able to see 150 feet down the street over here, because it's a health and safety issue. If there's nobody who can say you have to think differently about health, and you have to take a broader perspective about health and safety, housing is always going to be get short shrift. You need somebody who really is pushing this, not making the city unsafe, but maybe taking a slightly different prism to questions about public safety.
Thinking outside the box. I think Freeze has done that from his time at as NDS, head of NDS, and now he's with the city manager's office.
I mean, I think that's true, but I think that he also has had a multiplicity of responsibilities. When we're talking about this person being singularly focused on housing, I think that's
I guess
take that and run with it.
like how there's been a bunch of like deputy. So then you guys are saying there should be a deputy director focused just on housing, part of the city manager's office.
I mean, I think that it's hard to know. I still don't have an intuitive sense of like what the right chain of structure and what the right title is and everything else. But I do reinforce what Dan was saying, which is without the authority to have real meaningful influence on other decision makers, that it will never be able to actually make meaningful potential change.
And
I agree.
just as like a city councilor perspective, from my perspective, whatever level of seniority it's given, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, I think part of it will be beyond whatever the determination of the seniority level is or the wording of the position. It will have to involve the city manager on their own or the city manager at the direction of city council saying, I empower you to proactively work across departments, and I
Agreed.
it's directing you that I trust you enough to proactively pursue things without it going through all those processes. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it's not going to be.
That's absolutely a core of part of, I think, a revised job description for this role, working interdepartmentally across.
I think that
solutions.
Like, just to kind of sum a little bit of it up too, is that this idea of a housing program manager is not envisioning the same like role that existed before, I think, because that role you have to do so many dated, like you don't have the capacity to think strategically or to be building relationships and taking the time to do those things and working across the aisle because you're bogged down with doing all these other tasks that could be done by other staff members, and then freeing up that manager or whatever their title is to do that strategic and relationship building work that everyone has recognized is just like not really there right now.
So it seemed to me like in the beginning, in my head, I was counting that you all already, even before these new positions, you need 3 more people.
That's what.
Or 2.5 more people. Even before this.
Well, I think this bringing.
Even before this, I mean,
You need to
maybe I wasn't understanding it, so if y'all help me out. But as I was counting, you're doing double job,
At least.
or 3.
You
Right. And you're doing right. So even before the new job, you still need 3 bodies.
Well, there some
Or 2.5
It's
bodies.
captured in here, what that need is.
some of those are designated as existing, even though they don't have somebody in them right now. So I think it captures what you're trying to say.
Yeah,
We definitely need that chart.
yeah. Yeah, we do. Because in my head, I'm counting, and I'm counting on my finger as you're talking. It's like, okay, if we're talking about changing the trajectory and building relationship to make the programs even better, you're gonna need the bodies.
Yes.
And then what and Sunshine is talking about, that ombudsman, or I don't know if that's what you're saying too, Diane, but that's needed. I'm telling you, that is needed because of how the climate is right now in the city of Charlottesville. Something is needed. Where we can, where we can, go to someone that we feel that you could be totally honest with and that they can help. And the last thing I would say is that preservation of neighborhood has just gone out the window. And I think for me, that's where I saw Joyce being so helpful in getting you to understand why you need to preserve this and how you can preserve this. And maybe this is what we can do. So, and then the fifth thing there, can I just ask another question? No, I know you say you like it, Dan, but does this mean that the nonprofits such as PHA, CRHA, and Habitat, who is trying their best to provide deeply affordable housing, they will have the city would then be competing to other funders or philanthropists out there?
I will say over the last 5 years, I have probably sent a dozen opportunities that required city to play a role in terms of the application.
Oh, okay.
That we couldn't do on our own, that the city did not have capacity.
Oh, and
to actually
word it
do.
differently then.
Yes, ma'am. So,
As you were reading that, I'm like, oh, so now you're gonna compete, Now all of your supporters that you who contributes to the philanthropists who will contribute to the housing funds to try to help it make it deeply affordable. Now you're gonna have the city going to them. So again, that's competition, and that's what we always run up against.
You've got to be really clear that it's not the idea is to grow the pie.
Okay, so
but
that's why I'm asking.
So,
that.
Joy, for example, like in the county, there are a lot of funds that we could use at Southwood, but we're not eligible for. We need the county to apply for on our behalf. We become a sub-grantee.
Okay, so can we just word that a little bit differently then?
We'll fix that. So basically, it's fund development to expand the availability of non-local taxpayer funds without competing. But as Sunshine said, when the city needs to play a role, we'll be available to do that. So that if there's a grant opportunity requires a nonprofit and the city sponsor, a lot of times the city just has to put its name on the form, say we're sponsoring it, or the city has to play a role and then the nonprofit can get the funding. So all of those things that would expand opportunity for funding, not take away.
Okay.
Well, I will clear that up on the
Nicole.
Yeah, sorry, we're interrupting your.
No, this is
Okay.
why we're here.
So since there are 3 flow charts, what about a 4th one? I just kept thinking about all the other, as you listed, all the programs that the city wants to do. And I keep thinking, like, how does this one fit in? And how does that one fit in?
Yeah.
And I know city council, obviously they have to finish up their processes, but that might be an interesting.
I think that's a great suggestion. And Andy and Mel and I were talking about this a few weeks ago. Like this evaluation, the scope of it was intended to focus on what is needed for the housing program within NPS. But the truth is that the city is delivering housing service, supportive housing services across the organization. Home to Hope, Pathways. These are all programs that are administered through Department of Human Services, through the city manager's office. Those are just 2 examples. So to have a way of zooming out and showing how all of these programs connect to one another, represent the city services in this space.
Except for I mean, Home to Hope and what Human Services does is trying to get people into housing.
Right.
Whereas from where I'm looking at it from is about how this portion of it is, how do we build these housing and what we have to do. So I see them as Human Services is doing what is it they're supposed to do. is about working with people to get them into housing or to provide the services. But on the other hand, helping to build, to me, that's where
Yeah.
there's
That's true. However, NDS actually is through CAPS and hubs doing a lot more than just providing grants for building housing.
Yeah.
A lot of the grants are
For the entire SISRAP program.
rehabilitation. SISRAP is for rental, supplemental rental assistance. So there is a lot of complexity, truthfully, to how the different
point taken.
programs are.
To go back to that 10%
Yes, sir.
figure that we were talking about earlier, does this approach that? 5 positions?
So I haven't put numbers up there.
If we were below 5% and we're doubling it, it sounds like we're at 7% maybe.
Yeah, five positions probably might not get you to $1 million unless we are really jacking up the city salary scale.
Well, you have
But-
to consider benefits.
Well, and there's other things that go into admin, not just paying the employees.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Consultant studies,
Sure.
external counsel.
but the bulk of it is, paying the people to do work.
And I think there's two components to that. One is, does it come up to that 10% figure? And the other one is, what is the source of the funding used for those positions? Is it city general funds, or is it carved out of the $10 million, which is a whole question that I am not in the consultant role to talk about.
And that was another question
That's-
maybe for another
that's
time,
the
is that
manager
are we
one.
basing this on, we probably have X amount of money?
Right.
These are the positions we could do with that, or are we saying we want to do these positions and then we're gonna go find the money for them?
So can carry on.
Ma'am. Okay, next slide. Okay, so basically in summary, I would say the 4 are essential. Number 1, 2, 3, 4 are essential to continue, revise and enhance them as we've talked about, expand as planned, monitor and report on results, and support and coordinate the whole network. So I think 1 through 4, it would be hard for me to say what you could do without in that. 5 is potentially optional, but I think there's real, as Sunshine has pointed out, there's definite opportunity to bring resources in without raising taxes on Charlottesville citizens. And it would be really good to try that, see how it worked. And if it doesn't work, then stop trying it, but it could be very beneficial. And just something about what's really involved here. I mean, Kelly's really kind of creating from the ground up a new housing programs department. She's going to have to hire and train at least 3, if not 4 people. You guys will be a part of that training and orientation because she will have to meet with you, learn about the community, learn about your programs. But that's a job. And I want to emphasize this, cross-training and cross-functional support. The resource development person really could be a backup to the compliance and monitoring person. Work doesn't come all at the same flow. There's cycles where the grant thing is very heavy and intense and it slacks off. The funding applications are heavy and intense. So having people be able to back each other. One of the things that programs lacked for the last couple of years is stability and continuity in both staff and capability. So doing this cross-training is really important. And just even putting together the work plan, the strategic focus, here's what we're going to do first. Here's what all those. So that's a really big step. And we're talking about the hiring process, the onboarding process. And still, we never get to just plan. We always work and plan. So we'll be doing that. And so, really what we're trying to do is do the most we can with what we already have, all of the programs in place. Really important to communicate effectively, a top priority of the city manager. Strategically consider what new things are top priorities, and then find other sources to help do what we're doing. And that's happy to answer the rest of your questions.
So I'm now like obsessed with word charts now. I keep thinking about them. What I'm curious, like what a place like Fairfax's word chart and like how many, and see how it might compare.
Yeah, it's not comparable. I mean, I'm gonna do some of that
Okay,
part of my charge,
Right.
and getting that info is not the easiest thing
I
there
know.
is.
I was thinking that I was like, oh, where do they have them?
But-
I can tell you Arlington's housing.
Oh, yeah.
Chart looks like.
Yeah.
There's about 10 people.
Okay. Okay.
For how much like annual
Yeah.
fund, and not that that's the only measure, but
It's more than Charlottesville's.
It might be the last. Don't hold me to it. It's like 14 or 15 million in housing, direct housing investment. They have an array of housing things they do, just like you guys do here. So there's not like always a one-to-one comparison,
Yeah, of course.
but we can get, the goal is to give some illustration of
Yeah.
what's potentially apples to apples.
And Google AI tells me Fairfax budget is 6 billion and Arlington's is 1.6 billion, which is to your point when you compare what we're doing to the size of our budget.
Right. Right.
200 million.
Yeah. So that's even a bigger disparity. It's like, it's in 24 times our budget. So,
Kelly, how can we best support you around this? Ultimately, this is staffing. Ultimately, I can argue all I want, but when you say this is the staffing I need, I'm going to support that. What's the best way to support that?
No, thank you for asking. And thank you, by the way, for those who participated in stakeholder interviews. I appreciate your time to build this. So the next steps are to develop this report, finalize it, share it with the city manager's office. We do not have plans for broader distribution or sharing of the information. It really was intended to be internal for our own planning and kind of awareness of what the needs are. So I guess I would just say if you're in conversations with people and there are questions, just to be building awareness and understanding, that's, I think, a way to be very helpful to us at this moment in time.
So obviously in our discussion, there's areas we're finding things, but I would say to me, even these recommended positions are still kind of a bare minimum in scope of what we're doing. Obviously our budget cycle is underway currently. I mean, do you feel like it's at a point where council just engaging in conversations with the city manager of like, this budget cycle is incorporating any something makes sense, or are we not yet at that
So
point?
I think the manager is presenting his draft budget in beginning of March. So certainly I think there's opportunities for discussion through that process. Something that Andy and I have talked about is that, given the budget climate that we're in, the thought of adding new positions is somewhat daunting, actually. And I will say Sam and James are familiar with the recommendations in this report, just so you're aware. So this might need to be something that's phased over time. So thinking about, what are the biggest, greatest priorities that we can provide our staff recommendations in that space. So I don't know if that answers your question.
I think so. I think it would obviously just be, however it's done, it would be great to at least get a start of this budget cycle. Because I do think these are just necessary to turn our intentions into reality. I don't think where we're at is sustainable.
Okay, any other questions?
Ask the school guys to get a copy of this.
Sure, we can do that.
Oh, you can have those. Yeah.
Here's the.
Oh, there's going to be one right there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it about 5 minutes, so we'll, let, Sunshine take over. But the next thing on the agenda is the check-in on the HAC 2026 priorities.
What's up with the whatever the acronym is, but the budget tool. What is it?
Intervention analysis tool kit.
IAT is what the letters are.
The last I'll try, and then so we had some offline conversation around when to schedule a time to get together. And we sent over some like some preliminary description of it and background and that sort of thing. I think what we decided was that we were waiting for the new chief strategy officer to be in place and to have time to ramp up. That would be the ideal person to sort of hold this and take with it, but we just haven't scheduled since then. I don't know how long they've been in place now.
So I think she's been in place about 2 weeks. So I was gonna give her a couple more weeks and reach out to her to just for an introductory meeting before anything. But then I would really like to use this as an example of, where there's interest in data monitoring, data trash, and using it to kind of inform decision making, right? Yeah, on prioritization. Yeah.
For those of us who are new or can't remember, what is our new chief strategy officer's name?
Yeah, no.
Oh,
Or Jen.
glad I raised this question.
On the spot.
So Jen, we've had a lot of new people start.
I know.
Yeah, I know, it's fine.
Hendricks.
Hendricks, thank you.
And Alan Pura now reports to her.
Okay.
And Steve King too, or no?
No, Steve King is the assistant to the state.
So you have
Oh, that's right.
So, I got it.
Well, there was a third strategy.
You might be thinking about the ICMA,
Oh, maybe.
staff to focus on prosperity initiatives. Yeah.
I don't remember where on the priority chart the landlord risk reduction fund landed in terms of our evaluation for this year, next year. But either way, I would lift it up as an emergent, not like imminent priority, but a priority for this year, specifically just as a quick recap. I participated in, and there are a number of other folks primarily from the city, but included representation across the Blue Ridge Area Coalition for the Homeless and Potcham and others in an emergent initiative called Direct to Housing, which is funded by and supported by a consultants engagement that BRAC has for addressing homelessness, not only long term, but sort of in the short to medium term. And I'm not going to go. There was a first planning meeting yesterday, so there's a ways to go in this work. But one of the tools that I think would be fantastic to have in place when that starts is that tool. And I think the general thought is that we would look for a target of like this initiative towards the latter end of this year. So that's probably the runway we have to get to that point. But I think as we look at trying to do a surge response to get people who are on the street housed, having a tool for landlords, both nonprofits and for-profits, that would give them comfort in accepting them, I think would be crucial. So we don't need to deal with it right now. I just want to flag it as probably a priority over the coming months.
I guess one way to think about our priorities is like so much of them require getting this in place first, like getting staff in place first. So what can be done
It's a good question.
before that? So, because it seems like it's going to be next budget cycle.
Right.
So
One thing I can say is that we will be putting together our departmental work plan for fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 28.
Yeah.
So we'll be working on that over the next couple of months. The decisions that are made about the budget will heavily inform that. What we can do with the resources we have or are given. So I think that this is helpful for us to hear what your priorities are, because we can think about how that lands on our work plan. Recognizing, of course, we're only going to be able to do so much because of the staff constraints that we have. So I don't know if that helps.
yeah,
And there might need to be some choices made, right? Like, we are interested in the tax abatement program, but this is a priority, what you see here.
an easier lift, maybe. Tech, maybe.
Nothing is like ever easy.
Yeah.
But as much as we like to
Especially in
snap
this
our
field.
fingers and make these things just happen, affordable housing just complicated.
And that those are my, sorry.
I was just thinking, maybe next time, because next time we can have the discussion about priorities 2.0, but let's get real this time. Because we had 4 priorities and now we have a restructuring of the staff and need to hire, onboard, all that stuff. Maybe we need to pick one or be realistic about what we're going to do. Maybe we need to revisit that one more time. And so because I keep thinking every time we come back to this, unrealistically, I know that, like, oh, well, we keep having, oh, let's check on our priorities again. But I understand we just don't have the resources. So let's make some progress on something.
Well, there's another part to that, which is, and it wasn't really brought up in the conversation, and it's something it's important to ask. There's a question of like how much lives within the city as a city function and how much gets contracted out that could bring capacity more rapidly if there's existing capacity to tap into, whether that's a local nonprofit doing something or some other third-party agency. And I think about when we contemplated the Landlord Risk Reduction Fund, it was at a time when we knew like there was very limited staff capacity. We knew there was no way the staff was going to be able to run it. So we contemplated the idea that there would be an RFP for an outside administrator of that function. So it wouldn't fall on the city to actually do the work. So I'm not saying that is the right solution in this case, but we contemplated that. And so that there, as we talk about different functions, that just keeping that in mind too.
Sure.
And
And I'll just add, even coming up with those options, evaluating the pros and cons, developing an RFP, issuing it, figuring out how to
Managing the agreement. writing the agreement.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is my job, to bring these kinds of things up so we can have a realistic understanding of what stuff.
But I agree with Dan, taking the time to like be thoughtful around what our priorities are, what's the capacity, what does the work plan look like, feathering those together so we can actually not feel like we're like spinning our wheels and actually getting the things that we said we're going to get done in a realistic manner.
Kelly, if I could just talk about the capacity thing, which I think is really important. I did start by saying that it's not always an FTE that you need. And in my work, a lot of times, and I'm not suggesting this in this case because
Sorry, FTE.
FTE means a full-time city employee. So I'll put this in.
Sorry, that's Georgia.
I think about as a city manager, which I was not a city manager, but in the position of city manager or city council, when you create a new FTE, you are making a very big, very long-term commitment of funding, benefits, and obligation. If you're doing something new that you haven't done before, that you're not sure how it's going to work out, there may be a shorter temporary pilot solution that would be a better step. And also the other side of that is some things are not the best thing for cities to do. Cities working directly with landlords, not always the best thing to do unless there's some other option. A lot of you as nonprofits have direct relationships with landlords and potentially could do a landlord risk reduction program. It still involve all the things Kelly said. So there's those two questions at least. What's the best type of organization to do this? And is this are we definitely making a long-term commitment, or should we pilot it, see how it goes, and then make that? It's a little tricky when you do that because if you want a really qualified staff person, they may not be interested in short-term pilot thing, but it's a big decision that should be made carefully.
I think that's maybe a simpler lift is just, the budget is under development. If people at this table have thoughts about the scale or speed of investing in this capacity, you can reach out to counselors and let them know. But the budget is, I don't know if that's.
Maybe that's what Hack does, where you just make a. Yeah, we
But a
can
formal
say,
statement.
yeah, like, what's the phrase Kelly used? Is it's not realistic for this budget cycle? How do we make that? Oh, daunting. You said it might be daunting for council to take it on. I mean, what if we
make it less daunting.
Well, what's the plan? So when are you going to bring your report forward, or is it not going to council? If it's this account?
We're not, this is we're not planning to take this to council. This is, I always view this and if you build it as kind of an internal assessment, for use by my use and the manager's office, and to inform my recommendations for staffing forward. So,
and so what's your, well, I know what your ideal time frame for hiring all this is today, but like realistically, when are you looking for funding to fund these positions? This budget cycle, next budget cycle?
So, I mean, I have requested one position already. That was the feedback I received, was even that would be hard to accommodate.
When you said feedback, where's that feedback?
Manager's office.
Yeah, maybe we push that.
Given what, the gap, I understand there's like a $13 million gap. I'm not sure what sort of initial information has been shared. So it's hard to add new positions when you got a $5 million gap anywhere in the organization.
Yeah.
So I mean, some of this is just, I think, to understand over time what we might need to be planning for, and how our capacity to take things on is really going to be limited unless and until we can, meet these needs. There's an education process, I think, that also is underway.
When you said the one, sorry, just a quick clarification. When you said one position that's outside of Madeline and the next housing
Right,
program.
so we have a housing
hired,
program manager and the compliance coordinator
and
that
then
are
you went
funded,
for one.
and I've requested one.
Okay.
And what I requested was that be someone who can, meet our critical needs of housing finance, development, specialization, and someone to support housing policy. Kind of trying to, unrealistic to request two, but maybe try to combine them in one.
Mr. Vice Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I move that HAC supports addition of one more staff member in the housing department as prerogative of the NDS director in this year's budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
So open up for discussion, and I'll start. Because I had a thought that actually, before we get into the meat of that, I know myself and many others in this committee, at least at the time, advocated strongly that the $10 million a year commitment be in addition to any staffing related expenses. The staffing would be outside that $10 million. The original consultants suggested that the 10 million include staffing, that $1 million of that would be dedicated to staffing. So there's a question for us, this body, as we contemplate advocating. One way we could get theoretically those positions filled is if we supported the idea that the funds come out of the $10 million a year. So wouldn't be new funds we'd be pursuing. It would be coming out of that allocation.
Can I clarify?
Sure.
So the 10 million a year, we are already meeting that through fiscal year 2030, and what we've committed for West Haven, for PHA.
Yeah, I mean, FY27, we're at $13.7 million. So
Seriously?
So we are committed actually at above 10 million through fiscal year 2030.
Wow.
So there's no way to
Gotcha.
really make the
FY29
are some of them. It really is in addition.
Okay.
The best we've been able to do for next year's budget is request of the 1.5 million that goes into the CAF every year, which is to actually primarily support the CAF and HOPS grants programs. That 10% of that be set aside, like 150,000 a year, to support consultants.
So when you say the best we can do, is that just like in conversations with city managers?
I mean, the best we can do given the fact that we've already allocated so much to.
I see.
Yes.
Restricted funding.
Yeah.
I mean, CAF is
That makes sense.
small.
Mhm.
It's,
0.58 year.
yeah, well, what actually comes out through the RFP is,
825,000 for CAF and 575.
yeah, and then when you divide it up between 30, 50, and 80, and it's not much.
No.
So I'm wary of kind
So I
of.
want to circle back. There is a motion on the table.
I
So what can we focus the commentary on that? Yeah.
So I like Dan's motion, and I was thinking, it does seem like a lot of this, and we've all kind of talked about this, kind of the filter through the city manager's office is kind of hit a bit of a roadblock a little. I mean, I know Sam's got a million things and blah blah blah, and he's doing great, but it has kind of stopped at, and I do think council, like Dan has said before, champions as housing being the main focus of the city. So just kind of reminding council of that and pushing back against this filter, I think is a worthwhile, like just notifying council that these conversations in HAC, we've had all these priorities, but we've hit a roadblock because they need staff capacity. And in order to get X, Y, and Z done, we really do need to hire, like making that statement more like a more robust picture of what's been happening. I think that's worthwhile. So whatever that word.
Yeah, but I agree with that. I'm gonna go talk to city council.
You're up there. But yeah, I mean, also there are, anyone can speak at any city council meeting and advocate for whatever they want.
Right. I mean, this presentation is posted on the HAC webpage. We'll probably post it on our.
It's not on that webpage right now.
HAC, but will be posted through the minutes for the meeting, and we'll post it on our webpage. So if there was any communication you wanted to have with anybody, you can link to this presentation, which includes our preliminary findings.
Michael, how does this filter up to you all if you're not sitting at this table?
It's
It's basically up to you as individuals to like zoom in or check the minutes. Like you're not getting reports from this meeting, right?
I would. That's not actually true.
That like confirms my impression.
The real answer is the first step would be, I think, me communicating with other city councilors the existence of this presentation and what it's recommending. And then if a majority of council is interested in discussing it, we meet with the city manager on a weekly basis and raise things at those meetings. And in those meetings, as part of the budget conversation, council just communicating to the city manager, this is a priority for us this budget cycle. And I think he would, if a majority of city council gives that direction, I think he would adjust. But obviously he's operating and trying to understand what a majority of council is telling him our priorities and a constrained budget. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think
would it help you to have a formal recommendation from HAC that you can bring to council to say, not just HAC talked about this, but HAC made a formal recommendation that we fund another position because we can't do, we're at a logjam. We can't do what we, even beginning what we need to do until staff has more capacity.
I think it can't hurt. I think it definitely helps just get it on council as a whole's radar. Because obviously, no one else is yet familiar with the recommendations or the broader conversation.
Any other further comments before we go to a vote? And I guess
we've got to do this before the March presentation, maybe.
Well, I guess one comment or question is if we passed a motion to say that we wanted to do this, we don't really have a draft of a letter as of yet. Is your thought that the motion would just we would have a small 2-person working group or 3-person working group actually work on drafting that letter, or are you anticipating we would create that language now?
Do we need the letter? Can we just make an emotion that we support in this budget funding of another position in housing as
I was kind of saying maybe make it a broader.
I see.
I mean, not that we have to do that, but I just think that background is helpful. But maybe Michael Payne can fill in, and this is just the motion is just a starting point to have that conversation.
Yeah, I don't know whether I don't know. So like when on the planning commission, I don't know whether it's still this way, but reports, planning commissioners would give reports.
Yep,
and it was nice for me as the HAC rep on the planning commission to have a formal motion that I can say on this date, the HAC passed this formal motion. So it's not me editorializing, it's just me bringing forward a fact for the other planning commissioners to consider. But I'm not against us passing a motion than delegating the drafting of a more fulsome language around it.
I mean, perhaps the way to approach it is like have a
Claude should
formal
write it.
one or two sentence motion that passes, and then have a supplementary explanation or background that isn't necessarily part of the formal motion, but is just additional support.
I think, and you mentioned this too. I mean, an example is like transit. Communicated priority to city managers. Increase transit service requires hiring lots of bus drivers. In the initial draft, there would be an increase, but it wasn't possible to get all the way to the service level we want. So along with that initial increase in drivers, there is a clear plan being developed for how to phase it with a specific number of years. So, but it's one or two positions, I think also having clarity, whatever we can or can't do this budget cycle, at least 3 years, we actually are like planning is happening to phase it in. All 5 positions. That makes sense.
Yeah, that does.
Do you want to restate your motion in full?
Okay.
And so we can, I think it's important like to have it clear.
I move that we support, including in this fiscal year's budget, funding for another staff position in housing. And I don't want to say pause for a second, basically at the direction of or discretion of Kelly, or whatever that position is, it should be Kelly's. We're supporting Kelly's ability to recommend whatever that position description is, rather than us saying, we should fund this person or that person.
Right, you support the request that's already been made, essentially, right?
Yeah, and I also don't want to make it clear that this isn't Kelly like suborning us to make this recommendation. That she didn't ask for this, but I want to do this, and but I also want to give her an opportunity to digest Andrew's. This is not all of the motion.
Seconded. Sorry.
As to be requested, or in consultation with the director of MDS or something like that. Well, Claude might or might not know, but what I'm trying to get is the nuance that it's not like Kelly didn't say, "Hey, support my recommendation." What I want to say is that I want to give Kelly the space to bring forward whatever position she thinks is the most necessary at this time.
Subject to MDS directors.
And that's why that background's helpful. We can say like HAC has created several initiatives of its own accord and spent several blah amount of time and has faced trouble in getting those implemented because blah blah. And so we support, in recognition of this difficulty and
having seen the most recent draft report or set of recommendations.
You want me to make a new motion with all that stuff in there? I could try.
I think we should have it recorded, because if we're going to make a formal motion, we need to know what that language specifically
All right,
says.
we'll scrap that. I'm going to remove.
Are you taking notes on this?
I have a sentence. I can read it if you want.
Yeah, read it.
Move that the HAC supports in this fiscal year's budget funding for another staff position in housing.
And actually not this fiscal year, sorry, right? It's next fiscal year.
So it's FY 27.
FY 27.
This budget cycle.
yeah.
May I ask my question? Are you also saying that you generally support increasing capacity or staff capacity? Is that what
Yes.
you're beginning with this?
Yes.
The current
I don't want,
request?
that's a good point, because I don't want it to come across as that this is it, right?
Right.
Like
Max said hire one person and we did, so that's it.
this is the first step toward
Create a realistic plan to implement recommendations.
as a first step towards building out staff that will be necessary to implement the vision of council around affordable housing. Necessary first step we recommend, including in this year's budget cycle, the inclusion of funding for the inclusion of one more
At least.
staff member,
Friendly amendment, at least one.
at least one more staff member.
Is it outside the 10 million?
Yes, that's important to clarify.
What did I say, Mike?
See, this is why we need a little.
In addition to, yeah, above and beyond the $10 million annual commitment. So good.
This is why everything's hard. Nothing.
Writing a sentence is hard.
So it's hard to put it simply.
Then,
And it has to be an iambic pentameter.
Am I trying? Okay.
If you want to uncover.
Why not? I move that HAC make a formal statement in recognition of the difficulty of implement. I know Sunshine's way better at this than I am.
Keep going.
The difficulty of implementing the city's stated housing goals and related programs such as blah blah blah. Due to its staffing capacity. Therefore, period. Therefore, HAC recommends that city council adopt NDS's request for an additional staff member, at least one additional staff member to be more, which such member shall be at Kelly's discretion. The HAC points to the preliminary findings of Andy and notes that at least two additional, and that even further, at least two additional staff members will be necessary in the coming fiscal years. Yeah. Is that okay?
Can you read it back?
Alright. I move that HAC make a formal statement in recognition of the difficulty, I'm already thinking about it better. The difficulty of implementing the city's stated housing goals and related programs such as blah, 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 due to its staffing capacity.
Limited staffing capacity.
Due to its what?
Limited staffing capacity.
Yeah, due to its limited staffing capacity. Therefore, HAC recommends that city council adopt NDS's request for at least one additional staff member, which such member shall be at Kelly's discretion. That could be me, it's better language, but the HAC points to the preliminary findings of Andy and notes that even further than the one staff member mentioned above, at least two additional staff members will be necessary in the coming fiscal years.
I'll second the motion just to get it on the table.
So you withdraw your original motion, so now she's making this.
Sure.
Okay.
Kelly, does that throw you under the bus? So,
Why does it go under the
well,
bus? I'm trying to
Sure.
in casual conversation, she mentioned that she's asked the city manager for an initial staff member. I'm not sure that that's it's public information as part of this thing, but would you rather this come from the HAC and not seem to have come from us supporting internal conversations that you've had with the city manager's office?
That's a good question. I think what I'm hearing through all this conversation is that you affirm the need for additional staff resources as identified in the 2026 NDS housing program evaluation. And you request funding for at least one new position for the housing program in fiscal year 27, with additional positions to be funded in future years. Is that what I hear you saying?
That is a motion that I would like to make if you throw it in. Because I think that's
Yeah.
kind of with you. I'll withdraw my second to that motion.
I got
and adopt that motion.
Is there a second?
Well, Kelly can't.
Yeah, somebody.
Well,
So you're saying so moved.
so moved.
Second.
Second.
Yeah, what is it? Oh, she was writing it. Okay, perfect.
I move that the HAC affirm the needs for additional staff resources as identified in the 2026 NDS Housing Program Evaluation. And we request funding for at least one new position for the housing program in fiscal year 2027 with additional staff increases in the coming years.
Beautiful. Okay.
Do we need to insert the outside of the 10 million? Or,
You got it.
Additionally, this motion recommends that the funding not be taken from prior commitments.
Honestly, I think
Not necessarily.
I don't think we need to say that.
All right, let's strike that part then.
You have a first and a second. Any other discussion?
I do want to talk about how, sorry, like this is necessary to do all the things we want to do. Like this is like step 0.
We can write a letter. I mean,
Yeah.
we can write a letter that's independent of the motion. But we can get the motion moving forward and then have a backup letter that goes along with this.
Want to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
All those in favor?
Bye.
Any opposed? Or abstaining? Passes.
I'm so eloquent.
All this reminds me of a fun fact. The city spent $1 million to the tourism board. Albemarle gives us $2 million in addition. And it doesn't host events. It doesn't sponsor anything.
Yeah, but there's more to see.
All $3 million only goes to digital social media ads.
Oh my
What?
gosh. Are you
That is so much more important than staff.
What?
You know what? So moved. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, not. No.
Yeah. So before
Yeah.
you public comment, next scheduled meeting is March
Thank
18th.
you.
We're gonna be in
Not
city
in
space,
city space. Yeah.
not here. I went city space today. It's not your fault. So city space next time. All right, open up to public comments. Is there anyone who would like to make comments, either online or in the room?
There's no one online.
And we'll make public comment.
Support the hack and hopefully constructed said letter. And being able to represent, at least from our perspective, because we do believe in understanding that affordable housing is a necessity and we want to make sure that we are in support of that. So I appreciate the construction and the labor of love that went into this. Everyone can be now better informed about the needs. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Letitia.
With that, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone.